Hello, welcome to ZIM Capture number 2. I'm inventor Dan Zen, and please forgive any grumbles. I was out at a rave last night at a warehouse in Hamilton. I wore my space disco pants. It was like walking around with two fat silver cylinders, and then on my head was a headdress of CD-ROMs. It was all pretty cool. Anyway, I digress. ZIM is an open source library to help make interactive media on the HTML canvas using CreateJS and JavaScript. Let's go to the ZIM site now at zimjs.com. In the first capture, we looked at the basics, what is needed to get started with ZIM, the frame, the docs, and getting ZIM, etc. Now I'd like to take a look at the Learn column to learn a little bit more about ZIM. We've got these captures, which is a YouTube playlist, and we'll increase the number of captures as we go. There's the ZIM Learn site, and I'll take you through that first. The ZIM Bits is a growing collection of interactive techniques. And then there's the CreateJS Facebook group that you can get help on. There's a couple YouTube videos introducing ZIM and introducing ZIM Duo. And then an interactive example where you're dragging and animating there, the code for that. CreateJS and JavaScript documentation, and some surprise learning possibilities at the end of the Learn column here. So let's take a look at the ZIM Learn site first. ZIM Learn was set up to do a workshop, a 3-hour workshop to create a game in JavaScript, well, and ZIM, assuming no prior knowledge of coding. So, whoa. And the site's useful for beginners and to start coding, and also for those who are new to the HTML5 canvas. So ZIM, as I said in the last capture, is a library that works with CreateJS to help build interactive media, and you can make apps and games and puzzles, art, and more on the HTML5 canvas with easy shapes, drag and drop, hit test components, buttons, etc. Now, ZIM should not be used for standard information sites. You would use normal HTML and CSS for that. So here we are starting the workshop. The requirements for coding in ZIM are very easy: a computer, an editor, and a browser, and you're happy. And that's amazing. Like, we've never been able to make interactive media more easily and more free. So I use Atom there. Then we had an introduction there. People may have come in used to HTML, where we have a document object model, and we have a set of tags that are all organized in a hierarchy. One of those tags is a canvas tag, and indeed, that's where we're working. We're working on the canvas. So there's also, CreateJS gives us a bitmap object model, or a BOM, and that allows us to nest on the canvas side. So we have a stage that we work on, and we can have containers, and we put shapes and text and bitmaps and sprites inside those containers. And CreateJS also gives us an event model to handle that. All right, so that's probably what that says, and CreateJS is free as well to help you do. It's like Flash. Flash had a display list. CreateJS gives us a display list. In gaming, you might call it a scene graph or a hierarchy, kind of thing. All right, so ZIM sits on top of that and is a bit like jQuery sort of for the canvas. Here's some sample HTML code to start off, just to show the difference. We have a div with an ID of tag and a class of CSS. We apply some styles. We can apply styles to that, .css, so this class will be color red. Here's some JavaScript. When our window loads, we call init, and then we say document.getElementById tag .style.color equals blue. Now, that's fairly verbose. Not only that, many of the properties, well, all of the properties in CSS that we're accessing through JavaScript are strings, so that can create some problems. Well, let's carry on anyway. Here's a ZIM example, and or a CreateJS sample, a ZIM and CreateJS. Here we're making a new CreateJS container. This would be put inside of a template that we'll show you in just a bit. So we're storing that container in C, in the variable C, and here we're stage.addChild C, and that adds the container so that we can see it. We're making a new ZIM rectangle of width and height of 100, so it's a square, and we're making it red, storing that in R. So c.addChildR, basically that's adding the rectangle to the container. We set the alpha of that rectangle to 0.5, and there we're using a number. So if we were in HTML, that would be much more complicated than that. We're setting the cursor to a pointer, and when we click on the rectangle, we're calling load picture. So here's the function load picture, and we're going to create a new bitmap based on a pic. We store that in the variable b, and we add it to the container. So container.addChild, our bitmap picture. We set the x and y to 10 and 200, and we update the stage. So that's an example of what coding in ZIM and CreateJS would look like. Let's see the template. We'll go over specifically the template in future versions of the capture. We've already discussed it a little bit in the first capture. Here's a template. We're loading we're loading ZIM and we're loading CreateJS. We can then use ZIM frame to create a frame that creates a CreateJS stage. We then can store that stage in a variable stage and have a stage width and a stage height, and we would put our code here. So this is all the template that we can code ZIM in, and we'll see this again in the future. And we stage.update. For this tutorial, I want to make sure that people know about coding in general. So if you haven't done object-oriented coding before, even if you have, this is a pretty stripped down definitions of what a class is, an object, property, method, and event. I've taught this for a long time, so I think really this is what you need to know, and have a look there. Okay, that's object-oriented programming. Then we talk about how to access assets, so shapes and buttons and pictures, text and containers. We talk about the programming basics, and this deals with the syntax and the various statements that we can use. So this is in all languages pretty well. Variables, concatenation, random numbers, conditionals, so that we can test things like if a number is greater than 5. So this handles the logic and the flow of your application if you're making a game, etc. Functions, it's a block of code that you can run at any time. Scope in JavaScript's tricky, so there's discussion about that. Looping and arrays and objects. So those are the programming basics, and those elements of programming are used in all programming languages pretty well to program. How about that? Okay, that's your logic. You also have interaction and motion, so specific to the canvas, specific to CreateJS and ZIM, there's ways to do things. There we are making circles, there we are clicking on the circle, a ticker for animation, although I now have animate and move include the ticker. I made a ZIM ticker, so that's changed a little bit. This, by the way, this tutorial was built for ZIM 2. It still holds true, but there are some improvements since then. Dragging and dropping in hit tests and pressing keys, etc. So how do we interact with the stuff that we're building? Then quite common in interactive media, we will nest things and tile things. So we put things inside of one another and move the whole bunch of them around. We tile things, and so here we are making a series of balls and tiling them and adding events so that we can drag things and so forth. Okay. Finally, we get to our game, and we made a small game. It looks like this. Oh, thanks. So there, we lasted 7 seconds. So in that game, we lasted 7 seconds. The idea was you're supposed to click those circles to make them smaller, but those circles keep growing bigger. And when the circles touch one another, they're out in a sense. And when all the circles touch, then the game is over. You see how long you can last. So we're loading assets, backing graphics. We have a waiter that shows up while we're loading, and then the waiter goes away once it's loaded. We get those assets. We're randomizing things and making a tile or a list of, well, not a list, but a a set of circles across there, and we're clicking them, etc., and doing animation. So that was the game, and we did we did fairly well in the workshop. We got the things on stage, we dragged them about, we did hit tests, etc. We didn't quite finish the game, but it was amazing, really, that we could even come close to coding a game in 3 hours using JavaScript. If you were using straight JavaScript, there's no way that you'd be able to do that. So now it's almost become like reading English. It's sort of like, hey, zim.drag circle, and you're dragging the circle. So that's pretty cool. So that's the ZIM Learn section. Let's take a look at the ZIM Bits. Right here, ZIM Bits is really cool. It's a whole collection of magic tricks, in a sense. So if we take a look here, each bit is in one of these boxes. And you can view them at any time. So here we are viewing one. This allows us to drag things around, and this one drags a copy. These ones stay, or this one stays in the box. These ones can go outside the box. So if you want to know how to do that, you view the code, and we look in at the code, and there's our frame template again. This one has a title, it has a description, and steps. So each one has steps, and there's the steps. We made a rectangle, we made bounds if we want a boundary. And then zim.drag rectangle would just drag the rectangle. If we want it in the bounds, we pass that as a second parameter. Okay, so I'll go back up and go back to the bits. There are currently in the 30s of the bits. I think there's 36 or something like that. Yeah, there's 36. So you get some complex ones. Although they're not from easy to complex, they're all kind of a mix. And this one is drawing with blitting. And let's look at that. Whoosh, womp, 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 womp. Okay, and you can see the code for that, and if objects are hitting, there's that one. Now, at any time, you can use this little square to view pictures of everything. So this shows you via pictures what is in behind each here. So there we go, showing animation. Okay, so that's ZIM Bits. In a future capture, we'll go specifically through the format of the ZIM Bits and even a couple examples, probably many examples in the future captures. Okay, back to the ZIM site then. We had the bits, and then next is the Facebook CreateJS group. And now I made that. CreateJS does hold its social media on Reddit, where you can talk about things, and on Google+, you can post things that you've made. You can report bugs on its GitHub, and it's got a blog, etc. But I made a Facebook group. There wasn't one, and I'm in there all the time. So you're welcome to come, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on CreateJS that I can, and indeed on ZIM. And that's also where I'll post updates about something's changed at ZIM and stuff like that. So please join that. There's about 100 of us, and you're welcome to join as well. Here are a couple of YouTube videos. The first one introduces ZIM. And so there I am in the middle talking about the ZIM create mode at create NTO. Okay, so that's about 15 minutes. It introduces ZIM. It's quite good. Good 15 minutes, well spent. And here's a second one. Glad you could make it. Yeah, I'm inventor Dan Zen. And in this one, I'm talking about updates since ZIM Duo. So this was just after ZIM Duo, and various updates in Duo, as it says there, and different things that I was making. So that catches you up with some updates. We've now launched ZIM Try, so there's ways to find out what's in ZIM Try, including these captures. So we'll continue there. Underneath the YouTube videos is an interactive example. It's this little head that you can pull and wobble, 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 and it gets happy. Now, as I drag around, it's sad because it's not sitting on the ZIM logo, but when it hits the ZIM logo, it becomes happy. Okay, wobble, 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 and then happy again. So there's an introduction here, which is pretty well what was in the ZIM Learn section, but kind of all written down in there in short formed. And there's also the example code, so you're welcome to go through that example code. As a matter of fact, I think we'll do a specific ZIM capture on this example code. It involves a few tricks, within interactive media, as well as common things like dragging and animating hit tests. Okay. Underneath that, there's the CreateJS site. So if you link through there, you can find the CreateJS documentation and JavaScript documentation from Mozilla. Our documentation, once more, is in the middle area here. Finally, at the bottom, there's the fact that we programmers, we're logical people, and we've been modeling life in simulations and games and stuff like that. So logical people modeling life are called philosophers. Ta-da! So you're an honorary member of the Nodist colony. So there's a philosophy called Nodism. You can read about that. And underneath that is the creativity framework. So based on the philosophy of Nodism, how do you create? It's all hierarchical based, and I've been creating for many, many years, many things. So I've analyzed how I do that and come up with a creativity framework at creativityframework.com. And you can also look at the Dan Zen Creativity Expo, which wraps all that stuff in explanation. All right, I teach interactive media at Sheridan, and our motto there is get creative. I love creativity. I've done TEDx talks, that is, on them and so forth. So, you know, the more, the better. Let's get creative. So if you're wondering what to build, that's a great place to look to. And that is the ZIM Learn column. Woohoo! Okay, so come on back. In our next capture, we'll take a look at the news column, and then we will go beyond. I'm inventor Dan Zen. Have a great day.